Hey everyone, this is the Real Estate Investing Podcast. This is episode 71 discussing can you sell your land flipping business? I'm your host, Daniel Apke, joined again by my brother and business partner, Ron Apke. Before we get into the show, let's go over a question from one of our featured members today. Question is, I have a property with a good amount of slope that I have under contract to buy. I have had a drone there to see the slope and it was confirmed it is decently severe slope. I still do not want to throw this deal away, but I'm hesitant moving forward. How do you guys handle these situations?
Yeah, I think you always say it, Dan. Like, this is one of the hardest parts of the business, like deciding that final yes or no. Like, you've done everything correct up to this point. You analyzed it on the computer. Like, yeah, this slope could be an issue. You got someone there, boots on the ground. Yeah, it appears to possibly be an issue, it sounds like. So you like you said, you're getting it at a good price. Like, I can't tell you over a podcast, like, yes, buy this, no, don't buy this. But I'm trying to think of the best way. You want to evaluate the land around it. If there are properties built on the land around it on similar slope, this is an extremely good thing. I would buy the land if it's at a good price. If the land around it, it's like one side of the street where your property is, nothing is built, it's all the same slope, I would be very concerned. It also matters the size of the property. If this is 30 acres, it's a lot better than if it's 2 acres. So, I mean, those things you got to take into account. At the end of the day, this is taking a risk on something like this isn't the worst thing in the world if you do have it at a really good price. But at the same time, like, your buyers list is going to be thinner. You're not going to have as many buyers for a property if it's really a severe slope.
Yeah, good point, Ron. And like Ron said, it can be really, really difficult. As long as there's a spot to build on it, we've seen that really, really help. If there's no spot to build, as long as there's a flat enough area to build, and just check, because a lot of times when a property's sloped, the properties, like Ron said, directly next to it have that same exact contour line trend directly next to it. So follow that trend over to your east, west, north, south, whatever it is, or usually, it just depends. But yeah, I'd follow that over and just see if they're built on your same slope, because that's a really good sign. It's very hard, and good luck with that. Keep us updated. But let's hop into the show. Can you sell your land flipping business? So what we do, we obviously flip land. So we're buying and selling land. We're buying under market value, 30, 40%, and reselling it for market value. But we are actually buying the properties. And people kind of look at this like a side hustle, which it can be a very lucrative side hustle, but there's so much more to it. And you can really build this out and scale it however you want. Maybe you want to stay a side hustle. Maybe you want to stay your own, no employees, or maybe you and a virtual assistant. But this is important to me because we work so hard to scale this. At least Ron and I and a lot of our members, especially our coaching members, Ron, they're working so hard to build a business up, to hire and scale. So at the end of the day, you don't just want to shut down shop and not really have an exiting strategy. An exit strategy is extremely important in this. In any business, I personally sold a business in the past. I built a business and sold it within 18 months. And I saw how amazing that exit strategy was. Like, your monthly cash flow in land flipping is great, but man, I tell you, when you get 50, 60x your monthly cash flow of an exit strategy in one lump payment or whatever, however you organize it, it is something incredible. So I think having an exit strategy is extremely important. Ron, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you said, like you got to think more than 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line. Like, you can say, I want to make $100,000 doing this. Great. But down the line, 5, 10 years, like, if you build this thing up, like you say, you don't want to just step out of it and say, I'm done doing land. And you just did this by yourself, which is fine. Like, I don't want to push people away from doing that, because if you can make a couple $100,000, then retire off whatever income you make from land is an amazing thing, without a doubt. But like, that lump sum that you can get from building a real business that can be run without you, that's the most important thing. Like, a business cannot be reliant on you to do all the day-to-day tasks and stuff like that. That is 100% a business that is not going to be sellable. In that, the systems and all of that, which I'm sure we'll get into a little deeper, Dan, are some of the most important things, if not the most important things, to make a business sellable.
Yeah, and like rental properties, obviously you can sell the rental property as an asset and whatnot. So like when you look at other forms of real estate, like owning rental properties, whatever, you have that asset there backing you up. You're just going to sell that at the end of the day, or you can sell, your portfolio of rentals. And there's different ways to do that, but this is a little bit different, especially since land flipping is so new. And that's our mission. Our mission is to create freedom for people, and land investing, in our opinion, is one of the best ways to do that. We're involved in a lot of different aspects of real estate, not just land flipping. And we see the pros and cons of all of them. But in terms of cash flow, getting you up and going, getting your freedom, we see land investing as the way to do that. So let's talk about exiting, an exit strategy. Let's go into systems and processes, Ron. Um, if you have your proper systems and processes in place in your employees, right, to the point where you, as the owner, as the CEO, don't even need to be involved in the day-to-day business, and you're really collecting money, growing the business, working on higher level stuff, giving the company some direction. If you get it to that point, there is no reason you shouldn't be able to sell this for a great multiplier on, in my opinion. It's no different from any other business at that point. Like, why would this be any different? I just don't see it. I know we don't have any overhead or anything, and that's the old school ways to look at businesses. It's like all your different overhead and assets under you and equipment and all that stuff. But that's like any tech company. You don't have overhead. You have employees and systems in place to do all the work. And at the end of the day, you become a machine, and you can sell that machine.
Exactly. I kind of wrote some things down, Dan, for like, what is someone buying? Because obviously it's dependent on us sending mail. And I wrote some things down. I'd like to get your input on them. Like, I think someone's buying the processes and the systems. In my opinion, that's the number one thing. They're buying your buyer's list. So if you have buyer's list, you have a system for selling the properties. They're buying the relationships you have with title companies. They're buying the relationships you have with realtors, and that should all be part of those systems and stuff like that. Then you obviously have the employees trained and in place to run the business as a whole. What are your thoughts on that? Because obviously they're not buying. I think beyond that, it's not going to automatically create cash flow. They're still going to have to operate the business and stuff like that. But what's your thoughts on that, Dan?
Well, it should automatically. You should get it to a point where they can literally get it and have cash flow month one.
Sure.
Yeah, you're buying your employees, but your employees are trained, and you have training systems in place. So say pricing, for example, you have a system for pricing, right? Whether your pricing guy leaves and another guy comes back, you have a system to train them and get them up and going. Trying to think some other aspects of it. Your sales, you have salespeople in place answering the inbound calls, closing the deals, listing the properties for sale. You have transaction coordinators in place, working with those title companies. This is a machine. There's 57 different things to do in this business, Lori said. Every single one of those has someone's role and a system under it. And I think that's the biggest thing, Ron. You got to be able to replace people. Like, people are replaceable at the end of the day. So when that person does, you got to think of someone buying a company. If that, COO of the company or the pricing guy or the transaction coordinators leave, right? If they got up and left shop, how hard would it be to fill their seats? It should not be that hard. That's the point you need to get it to, I think, to really. And we are talking very, very high level business right now. It doesn't need to be perfected. I sold a business and it had systems, but I was still fairly involved. And I sold it just fine. But at the end of the day, I did have different systems and things in place, not to the scale we're talking about now, though. But to get it your best multiplier, and to get your best, and by multiplier, I mean your income times whatever it's going to sell for. That's how they kind of evaluate it. So your 12-month or 1 month income times, if it's 12 months, are you going to get a 3x multiplier, 4x multiplier, 6x multiplier? These are things that you can really increase by creating systems in a more sustainable business, Ron.
Yeah, and I think I think doing that is so important. Those systems, like you said, I had a thought, but I can't remember it. And that's why we're investing so much into, actually, no, that's my thought I was going to say, Dan. With a new business like this, with a new model like this, there's probably never been a land flipping business that has been sold. Maybe there has, but I think those systems have to be so clear and so top notch. I don't think like you sold a drop shipping store. Drop shipping's a lot more common than this. A lot of drop shipping stores are bought and sold every single day. But if you're trying to sell the first land flipping business or one of the first land flipping businesses, these processes and systems, you got to assume you're selling to someone who doesn't know land at all. It's someone who's looking for that cash flow. So they see that you're making $200,000 a month in profit. They're going to see that cash flow and be willing to pay, $10 million for that business. But going beyond that, Dan, I think the training aspect, I didn't think about that, and being able to flip employees. Not that you want to have to do that, but it's a reality of anything, especially nowadays when people aren't staying at companies for 20 years. Being able to train the employees and having that system in place, and you not being the one hands-on doing that it's a really good point.
Yeah, and like Ron said, as land investing gets more popular, more trusted, that's where I was going with my old thought, how I kind of went in. I got sidetracked, but yeah, as land investing gets more trusted and more viewed as a more sustainable business over time, the average investor might look at it like wholesaling down the road. And I started going on a tangent of what we're doing with freedom and all that. And that's our goal. And that's why we're teaching land investing. Our goal is to spread this land investing universal so everyone knows about it. Everyone has the opportunity to get involved. There's so much land out there. There's so many different land niches you can get into. We need to share this with everyone. And that's what I was going with when I went on that tangent earlier, Ron. I wanted to just bring that up, how after it reaches more people and it's more trusted, it will be able to sell. One more thing I want to talk about, Ron, is kind of having a culture. People love to buy into cultures because then you can really, it can be have a great winning culture where employees are having a great time. Maybe if you have an office space somewhere, like there are so many different ways you can leverage this, I think, Ron, to be more attractive to the average investor. And you just said there probably has never been a land investing business that has been sold. And my mind just went ding, ding, ding. Like, I kind of want to be that first business to ever be sold in this space, Ron. But I'm not ready.
I want to sell to. The way I'm looking at it, I want to make our business so systemized that we can sell to a non-land investor. Like, I think there's a chance we could sell you know what I mean? And that's what I think is really cool. Let's talk about where we kind of are in this whole process, Dan. I've talked a little bit about how much we're investing in a CRM right now. But as far like me and Daniel are still way too involved in day-to-day things. Training is something that is extremely, but let's talk about us in the process, Dan, how much we have to go. I think the CRM is going to be a huge step for us in getting where we're trying to get, but you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, Ron called me out last night. If you guys were on the free Wednesday night call, 6 p.m. Eastern time, every single Wednesday, Ron called me out because he was going over a deal somewhere in North Carolina. And he goes, yeah, we just invested in a property in North Carolina. It was $100,000 for 6 acres or something, he said. And I had no idea about it. So that means we're moving in the right direction, at least, because I didn't know $100,000 was removed from our bank account. And I didn't know about that property. And that's what we're talking about, getting out of the day-to-day. Like, you have to create something bigger than yourselves. If you're holding up the company doing everything, it can only grow as big as you. If you want to create something bigger than yourself, you have to outsource, you have to hire, you have to build a culture, you have to build these systems and processes. If it was just Ron and I sitting here selling this just ourselves without the teams behind us, we'd be a fraction of the size. Even this land investing, like to spread this universal, Ron, we have to leverage other people. It needs to grow bigger than ourselves. I have a vision to have a bunch of coaches under us coaching our members and things like that. And that's just leveraging other people to grow it bigger and scale this to what we want it to be, to create freedom at a universal scale, Ron. Kind of getting sidetracked off what your initial question was. What was that again?
Where are we kind of in the process of, I think we're maybe 5-10% in the process of getting in place. Like, that's great that you don't, yeah. I don't know if that's great that you don't know about $100,000 deal, but I sure as hell do. And getting to that place, that's a huge step when neither of us know about $100,000 going out of our bank account. That's a big next leap, but where are we? I think we're 5%, maybe 5%.
Getting it to where we want versus where it's able to sell. I think we're higher on when it would be able to sell. We're moving in the right direction. Yeah, probably closer to 10%. I think the CRM is going to make a big difference. Our new employees are making a big difference. Definitely there's so much, like, you start thinking like 5-10%, then you start thinking you have a lot more. And then you realize there's a whole accounting side to it, a finance side, a banking side. there's an HR side. There's just so many parts and pieces to it. We got a long way to go. I'd say probably
once we
10%.
buy a property, like after that decision is made, I think we're good, not necessarily system wise, but as far as me and you kind of being out of it once we buy a property
Yes.
to when we sell a property, other than signing documents and stuff like that and little approvals along the way. But it's 5% is, I think 5%, Dan. Training is such a huge thing. The system, like, yeah, we're talking about CRM and we're moving in the right direction, but that CRM is a skeleton of what it's going to be in 6 to 8 months. But that's where our mind is, guys. Our mind is constantly thinking about how can we, not necessarily, I love land. I love being in this business. I don't have any plans to sell it anytime soon, but I know the way for us to cash flow the most every month is by making this as systematized and pretending like we're not needed in the day-to-day business. There's a podcast I was listening to, Dan, and it was all about leveraging. And he said, like, some people do this really well and like will hire people and stuff like that, and then they won't do anything themselves. Like, when you are leveraging your time or leveraging other people's time, you need to do something with that time that you've gained. If you gain a bunch of time and then you do nothing with it, it's not going to create growth or anything like that. So you leverage your time, you use the transaction coordinator to do that stuff. What are you doing to make your company grow bigger? Like, you might be working on your training program or some other system or stuff like that. That's the purpose of leveraging other people within your organization.
Yeah, exactly. If you are outsourcing, you have to leverage yourself to do higher value things. Always do higher value. Then in 6 months, what you were doing higher value 6 months ago was lower value, and you keep scaling up like that. So right now, a very high value thing is actually analyzing and approving properties, right? So actually saying yes or no to those properties, like we say, Ron. That's pretty high value. But in a year, maybe a higher value property is going in person to meet with a bank to get a $10 million loan and negotiating loan terms. You got to always be scaling up that lever. And this, guys, if you guys are new here, we are big believers in doing this as a side hustle. We're talking big scale. The title of this company is Can You Sell Your Land Investing Business? So we're talking big scale here. It does not need to be this, I don't want to scare people away from having all these systems and processes. You could do this with your notebook. I'm telling you, you can do the 6-7 figures with your notebook of profit. I promise you that. But if you want to grow it and do less work in terms of day to day and really grow it, this is what that's for, Ron.
Yeah, that's a good point to like slow down a little bit with what we're talking about. But I think that's the purpose of the title of this episode. And it's going to happen like any service industry. It's harder to picture a business like this being sold. But Daniel, like he said, has sold an online business. And we're building this to do the same thing. We're preparing it. But yeah, 100% side hustle, you can make 7 figures. I think it's once you get up to that 7-figure mark, it kind of becomes difficult to really grow that without having people and some really in-depth systems, because that's a ton of money and it's just a lot of deals you need to do. But you can 100% do this as a side hustle. You can also build this to $20 million a year. Not easily by any means, but it's a possibility in this industry.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that if we're only 5% where we want to be, just wait till another year, like when everything's in place, we have a lot more employees. It's cool. It's like you complete one thing and you're happy with it. And I'm happy with where we are now too. We're doing well, but you complete one thing like the CRM, and then you move on to the next thing, and you think you have one department, the sales department, all figured out. And then you realize you got to, have accounting department. Then you get all your departments figured out. You realize you need a board of directors, and it's always going to be something. Like, it just keeps getting problems, and the problems that need to be solved keep getting bigger and bigger, I think, as you scale. And I've seen that with other people's businesses as well. And just like learning and listening from some big entrepreneurs and some big businessmen, they always say the problems just scale up around when you grow.
Yeah, and I was listening to another podcast, or I forget what it was, honestly, and they were talking about like your someday, like you're always talking about like your someday. Now our someday, like what we're thinking, someday we're going to make $2 million a month in profit in this business, which 2 years ago we were talking about making $200,000 a year in this business, or $500,000 a year in this business. There's always going to be another someday, but our someday we're at right now, like we were talking about this 6 months ago. our rocks for our quarter is another thing. Like we're talking about project manager, hiring a project manager by the end of the year. We hired Logan. If you guys don't know him, introduce yourself on Discord. Logan's awesome with this. And we're just constantly like trying to get past. That's why we do the quarterly rocks, because I think it's so important to evaluate where you are and where you're going. And it's been really helpful for us. And we're constantly, not necessarily money aspect and in terms of our profit goals and stuff like that, but we're constantly, as far as our growth strategies, we are always hitting those earlier than expected. And that's the most important thing to me, because I know that's going to lead to the profit increases.
Hopefully that's what we hope. No, they will lead to that, but yeah, no, I see the money. I don't know. I see the money as like that the game's working well almost. I'd rather have all my systems in place, like you said, and just to lower profit, honestly, and just feel good about the systems than a really high profit. Because we could do that, Ron. We could eliminate all the initiatives we're doing and just crush the mail, send it out, and have a salesman and a couple VAs doing that and not worry about the processes and really blow our numbers out of the water. I know we could do that, but we are getting things in place. We're being strategic about it. We're really focusing on systems and other things. And we know in 6 months, like that's all going to pay off, and those numbers are going to crush what we could have done out of the water because we have great systems in place.
It's hard to do that too. Like it was really hard for me mentally. Like when we lost a salesperson and we're trying to hire a salesperson, like we're going to put our effort into hiring a really good salesperson to help us grow. We had to cut back on mail a little bit because Daniel couldn't be on the phones all day like that, but we're ramping up, getting those systems prepared. So this salesperson who's starting actually on Monday, by the time this is released, he would have already started, but he's starting on Monday for us. And growing with him, growing with our people, making sure you have the right people in place. It's hard to separate, to let an employee go, Daniel, who's making you money. But if you think beyond 6 months, 3 months, it just becomes inevitable, like what the right decision is.
Yeah, exactly. And you just gotta, that decision came down to our core values and what we believe as a company. His results were good. He didn't fit the core values. So, we made a decision to move on because we knew it was the best for the future company, not the company now. It hurt the company now. It hurt the company the last 3 months. The future company, the company of the future, aligning with our core values, aligning with our mission. And that's what we're all about. That's all I have, Ron. Any last comments?
No, I enjoyed this. Like Dan, we said multiple times, don't get over, like if you're first starting, don't get overwhelmed with all this. Worry about getting mail out, being consistent with that, which we talk about so much. But nothing else, Dan. I think this is really helpful.
I feel like we stress people out with this one because they see it's not that hard, guys. If you guys want to just make $500,000 a year, don't even worry about anything we just said. This is for growth and selling a company, and the process isn't that. But thank you guys for joining. To get started and to unlock your potential freedom that Ron and I are talking about, visit landinvestingonline.com/Discord. Join our free Discord where Ron and I are involved. Lots of other tons of successful investors and real estate investors are in there. Please like and subscribe to this YouTube video, Apple Podcast, Spotify, whatever you guys are listening on. It means a lot to Ron and I, and we'll see you guys next episode. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, guys.